We've got another premier horse racing event coming up this weekend, the Belmont Stakes, happening over in Saratoga this year during the renovations to Belmont Park. And to help us break down and know what we're going to be doing for our picks, we've got Ginger Joe, who is our horse racing expert as well as our golf expert here at the Sports Geek, now officially. I guess this is a little bit of a welcome here, Joe. It's really cool that you and I now each week can chop it up and talk about either golf or horse racing. But appreciate you coming on today. This Belmont Stakes this year seems like it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Really appreciate you again giving me the time. I'm very much glad to be part of the team now going forward, and hopefully we can find a few winners on the journey and find out who our viewers fancy too. Obviously, drop some selections in the comments, and we can, I suppose, we'll go from there. But yeah, we've got a really good race this weekend, Joe. The Belmont Stakes, of course, taking place at Saratoga this time again for the third year, over a mile and a quarter. A lot of familiar faces in the lineup this year too. We've got 9 runners, 5 of which actually came out of the Kentucky Derby themselves, and we can obviously go into a little bit of a deep dive into those runners as we go through. But look, we've got a really good race for this weekend, and I can't wait to get stuck in.
Yeah, just to quickly touch on the aspect of this not happening in Belmont, at Belmont Park, and it happening in Saratoga. How is that just historically, like, how does it change the approach for this race? Like, how does that affect how bettors should be looking at this compared to where the race normally takes place?
Sure. I mean, look, I'd love to give you an explanation and say, it's a big difference, but there's not a great deal of difference within the race. And the fact that we've got so many familiar runners in the lineup, we know a fair bit about these horses already. So it's more a case of how this race is going to pan out tactically rather than where it's being held. Personally, that's how I see it this year anyway. Of course, the fact that we've had the last 2 renewals here is always going to be pretty helpful too. You can get a good grasp of how the race may pan out. But for me, Joe, the fact that we've actually got so many runners from the Kentucky Derby sort of reopposing each other here is more the important factor here rather than where it's held. But look, it's a good venue regardless, Saratoga, but I am looking forward to it being back at Belmont Park, hopefully next year anyway.
What are some of the key strategies that bettors should be paying attention to in terms of the venue and then also just this race in general? So like what should they be looking for in these horses when they're making decisions?
Sure. I mean, on this occasion, again, in particular, the fact that we've got so many coming from the Kentucky Derby, you've got a bit of history to look back on straight away there and see whether your horse had a clear path, whether the tactics were right, sort of where they came from in the field, because that's definitely going to make a big impact on how I've narrowed down my selections for this week's event anyway. There's, for example, we'll go into Golden Tempo and a few others in a moment, but he obviously won the Kentucky Derby. But I do actually feel things may have just fell into his lap a little bit with the way the race panned out. Commandment didn't get a clear run. That sort of opened things up for Golden Tempo quite late. But I think the way the Kentucky Derby panned out tactically is what effectively gave us the result of Golden Tempo. And I wouldn't be so confident that we're going to get the same run of tactics here, which now might mean we get a different result. So, look, tactics is a very important thing. Of course, only bet what you can afford to lose. Gambling responsibly is a massive part in this game. I want people to enjoy it when they're having a punt. You don't want people to lose anything that they can't afford to. And just learn as we go through. Obviously, if the viewers stick with us, Joe, through the season, we can obviously continue giving people tips and advice on how to manage your betting, what to look for, and basically try and find you some winners along the way, as we've mentioned. So, yeah, look, keep it responsible. Watch back some races, and you'll start to see the better performances from some runners. You'll see some races where they've been a little bit unlucky too, and that's how you'll get familiar with the runners and riders. And that's what's again helping me narrow down this week's is the fact that we've seen these multiple times this year already.
So you touched on Golden Tempo, brought up there a second ago, and I haven't really seen much support for Golden Tempo in some of the things that I was reading, getting prepared for our interview here today. And I also, it's kind of surprising where he fits into this, that he did not participate in the Preakness. Do you think that Golden Tempo is a horse that people should be backing, or do you think that it's just a name recognition thing that maybe some people will just go with him because he won the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, exactly. Look, he's clearly very talented. You don't win the Kentucky Derby purely on luck. You have to have the ability. And at the end of the day, he did manage to finish ahead of Renegade. But prior to the Kentucky Derby, I didn't really like his prep runs for the race. He went off at around 33-1 as well. So I think the expectation was pretty there, laid out in black and white for you, what was expected of him the last day. Obviously, the fact that he managed to get it done, I've said he obviously has plenty of ability, but this 9-runner field rather than an 18-runner field, I don't think is going to suit him quite as well. The trip is going to be no problem, that's absolutely fine, but the way tactics are with this field, I don't think it's going to suit him quite as well as it did with the Kentucky Derby. He got a really clear run the last day, and I think that's basically what enabled him to get the job done, because we had a few well-fancied runners that were a little bit disappointing too. So perhaps he outran his odds and outran his expectations. But to see that being backed up, I'm not necessarily sure that's going to be confirmed this time around, personally, anyway.
Before we get to your picks here, are there any long shots that you think have value that bettors should be taking a look at?
Yeah, I have had a little bit of a close look at growth equity on this occasion. He is one that's definitely potentially overlooked. He's a horse that we definitely haven't seen the best of just yet. And what we are seeing from this horse is that the further he goes out and trip, the better it seems to suit him. He actually started his career by finishing second over 6 furlongs. He was then second over 7 furlongs. But since he then stepped up to a mile and 1 mile 1, that is when we've actually seen the best of him. He's sort of bred to appreciate the shorter trips, but the evidence is there now. We can see it quite clearly that the further he goes, the better he is going to get. We've got an extra sort of extra furlong this time too. Tactics won't matter either, and the fact that he's been hitting the line really hard suggests to me that this extra trip is probably going to help him out. So outside of the runners that we've seen come from the Kentucky Derby, I think growth equity could be quite well overlooked here. I think he's around 12-1 at the moment. I wouldn't put anyone off taking a piece of him, because the fact that tactics aren't going to matter too much as well means we're likely to see the best of him once more, and that should put him in the picture to some degree. So growth equity is definitely being overlooked somewhat here, I would say anyway, Joe. Interesting that we've got Franco on though. Flavian Pratt has still decided to ride emerging market, but I do think that growth equity is talented and one we haven't seen the best of yet. So all things considered, there's not a lot of negatives surrounding his chances. So at 12-1, you could probably spare a little bit of change on him this week as well.
All right, hit us with it. What are the 3 horses that you're going for your picks for this race?
Sure. So number 1, I'm going with a rock solid contender here, and he is the current favourite, Joe, in Renegade. He was only just beaten in the Kentucky Derby. I know it's not a very original selection, but at the end of the day, we want to find the horse that's going to win us the money, and I think that's Renegade this year. He's a really, really big finisher. He stays this trip no problem as well, and I actually think he could probably go further if he was really required to do so. But again, he's a really, really strong finisher. He's probably going to sit off the pace a little bit here once more. He does like to, play his cards late. But the smaller field here will be no issue for him either. I think it'll actually suit him quite well, because he's going to have a pretty clear passage the whole way around here. Rock solid contender, seems to show up time and time again. Absolutely no negatives to his chances. So if Renegade is going to get beat this weekend, it's going to take a serious performance, but I don't think that serious performance is in this field. He looks rock solid to me. So I think the market's right on this occasion. Number 1 for me is going to be Renegade.
And any other picks that you're going to be back in here for the Belmont?
Yes, definitely. I was a big fan of Commandment when we recorded our Kentucky Derby episode. Prior to that, he obviously won 4 in a row, but he did break really slowly last time out in the Kentucky Derby, lost a fair bit of ground quite early, and then when he tried to make a move on the home turn, he wasn't anywhere near the rail. He was sort of 4 or 5 wide the whole way. It really wasn't an ideal passage for him. So I be quite happy to just draw a line through that and say things didn't necessarily work out for him. I would also like to add the factor that I don't think a big field would suit Commandment either. He's a horse that just winds up slowly as the race goes on. So I think this time, with just the 9 runners, we're going to see the Renegade that we have seen previously come here to Saratoga. I would also say there, Joe, that John Velasquez back in the saddle here is going to be a major positive to his chances. He knows this horse really well. And I think the way this race is going to pan out again is just going to bring the better attributes of Commandment back to the front. So I think Renegade is going to take some stopping, but I do highly think that Commandment is going to be the one that's really going to be chasing him down. Another strong finisher, and he'll appreciate this much smaller field, I think, this time as well. The big field probably really didn't help his chances. Probably worth mentioning as well, after he went 4-5 wide at the bend, I think quite a lot of the petrol had been used up at this point too. So we didn't see that usual strong finish from Commandment. But again, without those traffic problems, there's no excuses for him this time as well. So for me, the two box tickers this week are Renegade and then Commandment.
If you had to throw in a third that you like, would there be a horse that catches your attention, or do you want to cut things off there at Commandment?
No, I do. As mentioned, we've spoken about growth equity already and sort of why I think he's going to have a really good chance here. A horse that has got so much upside to him. Like I said, we just haven't seen the best of him just yet. He's a really strong traveller. He's got speed. He's got stamina. And considering the further he goes, the better he is getting, it is very acceptable to assume that there is more improvement still to come. The horse he beat last time has got a fair bit of talent too, and he was only doing what he had to do to get the job done. So look, growth equity is definitely the fly in the ointment here that could outrun his odds. I do think, Joe, hopefully this is all about Renegade and Commandment this time round.
I hope you're right, because before we even hopped on here, I put a bet down on Renegade. So it's making me feel pretty good, and hopefully we can get some combined positive energy here. And we've got some winners here on today's episode. Folks, everybody, make sure to go and subscribe to the channel, because we're going to get a ton of great content coming out of Ginger Joe going forward. There's going to be plenty of golf that we're going to be talking about, with so many major events coming up throughout the summer. Everybody, we'll catch you later.